One of the most unironically kind characters in all of Berserk is Flora. The old witch of the Spirit Mansion tree had a terrible reputation in Enoch Village, but in person, she was the kind of caretaker you'd empty out your bank for. From her wisdom to her knowledge and her faith in the human spirit, Flora was just an out-and-out good character, which is a rare enough thing to have in Berserk. So when Griffith sent his war demons to attack and kill the old woman, we were disheartened by the idea of Flora not being a part of the story anymore. Initially, we assumed that the massive wall of flame she summoned at the moment of her death was just some sort of a final gasp protective spell, which is why we were so excited to see Flora make her comeback in the Corridor of Dreams segment, because she is the kind of Obachan you want to have watching your back in a nightmare. But we also wondered, how is this possible? Didn't Flora die at the hands of Griffith's war demons? Then how can she help Shirke after her death? Well, that's what we're here to investigate, so let's get straight into it. Before we do, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. But first, context. Flora's life and death. We're going to keep this short because, honestly, we could do an entire origins video about her despite the tiny portion of actual screen time she gets, but let's just put it this way. Flora is amongst one of the strongest magic users in Berserk. When we meet her, she's in the twilight of her life, but in her heyday, she must have been a terrifying force to reckon with, because her heydays lay 1,000 years in the past. Flora is really old. Like, really old. She calls Skull Knight old friend, and we know he's 1,000 years old at least because he's King Geiseric. Go watch our videos for more on that matter. She was a follower of the Lady Priestess of Cherry Blossoms, Geiseric's lover, and that is perhaps how she encountered him in the first place. Flora also knew Gedfring, who was practically a child at that point in time, and must have been close to him because the old wizard calls Flora his dear friend. Flora is introduced as the kind-hearted, all-seeing, all-perceiving mistress of the young witch Shirke, and she instantly senses everything about Guts in his journey just by having one conversation with him. Her centuries-long existence has given her deep knowledge of the astral world, as she easily explains the purpose of a Behelit and the vague existence of the God Hand to Guts, where he had struggled for answers for nearly 3 years. Flora is clearly a highly advanced magic user, as she was the designated protector of the Berserker armor, a thankless task if you ask us, and she also drew a seal on it which would protect its user's ego, aka Guts' ego, from suffering a total collapse. As Hanar, the creator of the armor, explains, the Berserker armor was liable to consume its wearer if they let their guard down for even an instant. Guts had managed to use the armor non-stop on his journey from the Spirit Mansion tree to Elfhelm, only taking it off when he needed to recover urgently. We have to assume Flora's seal helped his ego from suffering a sneak attack from the Beast of Darkness and making him go berserk on the seahorse and stuff like that. So yes, Flora is powerful when we meet her, but she is also extremely old. Flora calls Skull Knight an old friend. Think about that. That guy has been fighting the Inhumans for 1,000 years, which means Flora is about 1,000 years old. And sure, while time might move differently in the domain of the Spirit Tree, Flora's mansion is not Elfhelm. She claims to be exhausted by drawing a single talisman on the Berserker armor. That indicates that her ode, or her life force, was running out already. Indeed, she couldn't even put up a defense against Griffith's war demons when they attacked, being reduced to only muttering how easily they were able to breach her supposedly unbreakable barrier seals. Flora died when Grunbeld's fireballs hit her spirit mansion, and she couldn't even summon a water spirit or something to keep it from spreading. Shirke tried to run to her mistress in a panic, but Flora assured her disciple that she was all ready to venture into the world on her own journey and that she was proud of her. Flora told Shirke she would see her in her dreams again, which we took as a kind final gesture from a mentor to their disciple. Their physical bond might be coming to an end, but their emotional bond would persist through memory. Her final wish was to see Shirke's bashful smile once more before she finally passed away from her mortal flesh. But once that actually happened, Flora's luminous body did something curious. Right as Guts and the rest of his party were about to be cornered by the war demons, Flora, with her dying breath, summoned a gigantic wall of flame that not even the Flame Dragon Knight Grunbeld could breach. In the process, her kind old face was restored to its youthful beauty somehow, and she urged her disciple to hurry on to safety, instead of wondering how all this was happening. At the time, we thought that this was some sort of a death magic spell Flora had cast to help out Shirkei as a last resort, kind of like post-mortem Nen from Hunter x Hunter. But once the Black Swordsman party made it to Skellig Island and was granted entry into Elfhelm, it became clear that Flora hadn't exactly died, she'd just become something different. The term was introduced in the Black Swordsman arc, but its meaning changed by the time Fantasia rolled around. What is a daemon, and why is Flora one of them? If you're like us and you've read the Berserk manga at least a dozen times over to cram every possible detail into your heads, then you'd know that the word daemon debuted in the series in the first arc itself. Back in the glory days of the Black Swordsman arc, the Slug Count used a disgusting, stomach parasite, we want to call it, to turn Zondark into a pseudo-apostle, except he didn't call him that. He called Zondark his daemon. It's clear that this was supposed to mean that the captain of the guards had become the Slug Count's personal demon, but once Miura had fleshed out his story's core concepts further, he decided he didn't want to use that word for pseudo-apostles anymore, which is why they are known as they are today. So what then is a daemon in Berserk? Well, it's what Flora becomes after her death. See, back in chapter 229, Flora promises Shirkei that they would be reunited in her dreams, and at the time, it seemed like a melancholic promise from a mentor to keep their grieving disciple's heart intact. But then we reached Elfhelm and entered the Corridor of Dreams, and we realized something. Flora might have meant what she said literally. The Corridor of Dreams is a ritual that is exactly what it sounds like. The people participating in the ritual use the Corridor of Dreams to enter each other's subconscious and heal whoever is the prime subject of the ritual. When Shirkei and Farnace reach the final fragment of Casca's broken mind, they are nearly overwhelmed by the reconstruction of the eclipse before Shirkei hears a familiar voice. When Flora died, she told her disciple that she would meet her again in her dreams, but she also told her that only her existential form would change. Flora emerged from Shirkei's witch hat, which was gifted to her by the old mage herself, and bestowed a blessing upon her dearest student. She used her massive new flame form to attack the apostles that were sieging Shirkei and Farnace's party within Casca's broken mind, and allowed them to get to the final fragment in time. Guru Gedfring explains her current existential state to us later, after Casca has had some time to adjust to waking up. Gedfring, being one of the archmages of Elfhelm, asks Shirkei and Farnace to demonstrate their skills before evaluating how they will be helping out at the village. He's impressed with Farnace's formation of the Four, and agrees to help her become a healing witch, but he's more than delighted with Shirkei, whose magical potential leads Gedfring to make her a rare offer. The Great Guru asks Shirkei if she would like to commune with the daemons that dwell in deeper stratums of the astral world than the nature spirits she's been communing with so far. He explains that daemons are powerful astral beings who outrank nature spirits like the Lady of the Depths and the Rotting Root Lord in terms of pure magical strength, but not all of them are purely astral creatures. Some daemons had been human heroes in their previous lives, and he tells Shirkei that his friend Flora is one of those rare humans. Shirkei immediately accepts his offer because she wants to see her mistress again, but sadly, she doesn't get the time to do so. Elfhelm is attacked and destroyed shortly after Casca's awakening, but we did discover just how Flora was able to escape death. The very first time that Guts met Flora, he remarked that her presence made his brand of sacrifice itch, but not in the same way that it does when apostles are nearby. He makes similar observations about the Skull Knight, whom we know to be King Geiseric's soul trapped with that skeleton armor thanks to Hanar. It's possible that Flora was marked for ascendance a long time ago in her life for Guts to feel that way around her, and it is mentioned that she violated a taboo for which she was expelled from Elfhelm. But we don't think that's related to her becoming a daemon. We think it's more likely that Flora's kindness and warm strength in life translated into her fiery form in the afterlife, because that's exactly the term used to describe astral beings. An interstice is nothing more than the afterlife, so technically, Flora is dead, but when you consider the fact that Berserk's current physical world is overlapping with its spiritual counterpart, it doesn't become a stretch to think that maybe, just maybe, Flora is out there somewhere in Fantasia, just waiting to see Shirkei's bashful smile once again. It's clear that Miura introduced the concept of a daemon as late as he did for a reason, and we might just see Flora in her super young and super hot daemon form once again before the story ends. But the context within which that occurs is what will be interesting to see. Will she join a grand final army to face off against Griffith? Will she work within the bowels of the astral world to help undo causality's nefarious plans? Or was her appearance in the Quarter of Dreams the last we'll ever see of her? Guess we're gonna have to wait for the next chapter for the answers to those questions. Marvelous verdict. But for now, that's gonna be it for this video. Flora is one of those characters whom you just can't help but like, and her death was one of the most shocking moments in Berserk because it came out of nowhere for us. We were so glad to see she hadn't died after her spirit mansion tree was destroyed, and we're very intrigued to see what the purpose is for her second life. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments section down below, and we'll see you in the next one. And, as always, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching,